Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to Noonday Meditation and Contemplative Prayer Power Hour. My name is Martin Coward, and I'm going to be your host in this virtual sanctuary where we've been meeting every day over the last year to love and support each other through this pandemic. And I'm so grateful that we had each other and we had this space in order to be challenged, to at a safe place, a safe sanctuary, to actually share our pain and our experiences and our joys that we've experienced in the last year. And now that we've come through the pandemic and we're seeing some light and we're seeing some changes in our government, we're seeing government that cares for us. We're seeing legislation that's working for the betterment of our world and our country and the people who live here. We're also looking at other people who are inspiring us by just being extraordinary in their humanity, by the ordinary things they do that inspire us. And this month we've been celebrating gay, bi, and transgender men who inspire us. And I'm so excited today to welcome to our show a longtime friend of mine, Felix Papadakis. I met Felix in 2007 when I took my first job with a financial services firm, Strategies for Wealth. And we shared space together. He was a cubicle over from me. We were just young newbies. He'd been around a little while, but we were the only gay men that I know of at the time that was in the firm. And so we became friends, and we've been friends ever since. And during the pandemic, we had a chance to reconnect, and I got to hear some of his story. And after hearing his story, I thought, wow, he is exactly the kind of man that I want to be on our show. He is an extraordinary man doing ordinary things that inspire us. So before I introduce him, I just want to let you know that if you're joining us, please enter your name and say hello to us in the comments section, in the chat section, so that I know you're here, and just say hello, because I don't know. Otherwise, I just see numbers on the board, and I like to know who's here. I'd like to see your name. So please say hello. If you have comments or questions, then please also put those in the chat section, and we'll be glad to answer those questions for you as well. Same as if you're watching the replay. We get more people watching the replay than actually coming to the live show. So if you're watching the replay, also put some comments in it, and I'll come back and answer them. And maybe even Felix will do the same if they're addressed to Felix. So we're really here because we're here to share our stories with you and help to inspire you if you're going through perhaps some tragic events and difficult times in your life, that there is light. As we've seen, there's light at the end of the tunnel with the pandemic. There's also light. There's light at the end of the tunnel with our own personal tragedies and difficult times. So without any further comment, Felix, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about how you got here. Tell us a little bit of your story. I'd like to hear some of the things and how you got through it and how you transformed those difficult events into what you say is you're living your best life ever in Asbury Park, New Jersey. So welcome to the show, Felix.
I think trying to, every day is part of the growth, and every day I'm evolving. But I think it started, I guess, when I first realized that I was gay, and maybe that was when I was like 10 or 11, and I realized I'm writing a short story now about the family that I grew up in, and it's called Cult. Because, we grew up in a very tight-knit Greek-American family that did not accept gay people, did not accept blacks, did not accept Jews, did not accept Catholics. It was only us. And I knew that I wasn't part of us. So I suppose after I moved to Manhattan, because I had to get out of nowhere, New Jersey, as fast as I could, and after moving to Manhattan, I started in that cycle that so many gay men are victim of, which is I'll show you how much I matter by what I buy and what I do. And when I met Rand in 1990, I think 4, we joined forces in doing that very same thing. So we were always living above our means. We were always buying houses that we couldn't afford. We were always on another Atlantis vacation, which was $12,000, $15,000 each time. We always flew business class. And we always spent money like we made it, So that was all looking back in retrospect, tragic, because the piper had to be paid at some point. Rand filed bankruptcy. I filed bankruptcy. And only now, after 2 additional tragedies, which was, like you said, my brain cancer diagnosis in '07 and the loss of my husband after 24 years, have I started to quote Ian Van Zant, who wrote a book called Make Peace from Broken Pieces. So I'm 55 years old and I have a lifetime of broken pieces that I'm now assembling and saying, oh, this is where I am right now. So I joined Strategies for Wealth because that was another opportunity that was presented to me, and I never said no to opportunities. And I think that was probably one of my better characteristics, that I always said yes. Whatever someone said to me, some opportunity, some business opportunity, I always said yes. I sold insurance. I owned a bakery in Newtown, Pennsylvania. I owned a small neighborhood magazine here in Asbury Park. So I always said yes because my mind was always running as fast as it could. And it's only now, again, at 55, that I've learned to calm my mind, that I don't have to do those things to get more attention, because that's what I was doing them for.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't authentic.
Yeah, I think we all do that. I call it, we go, we're not born unworthy, but we're taught we're unworthy, particularly gay men. We're taught that actually that wonderful creative force within us, our sexual creative energy, it's not even, we don't even know what it is when we're little boys. We just know that it's an energy, but we're told that energy is bad and that we're somehow flawed because of that energy. Mm-hmm. So then like everyone, every man in our culture is always trying to prove their worth by making more money and being important. And then if you take on top of that we as gay men are trying to prove our worth because of we're even less worthy because we're somehow sub to other men. We're not quite full men yet, is what we begin to pick up because of what we're taught. We have to work even harder to show the world how important we are and how valuable we are. And it's all based on a big lie, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I was in therapy for years.
Yeah.
When my therapist, Arden Greenspan Goldberg, who used to say, Felix, don't you realize that you are okay just the way you are?
Right.
You need a nicer car. You don't need a nicer house. You're okay just the way you are. You're empathy. You're an empath. You have compassion. You relate to people. You give of yourself. You're a good person. It's hard to accept that.
Well, it's hard to think that's enough.
Exactly.
We think we have to do more, which is completely false. Mm-hmm. We have to do less and be more loving, accepting, empathetic, compassionate. And that's what makes good leaders. And we have to be competent in our whatever, and master our crafts, whatever that might be. But when we're mastering crafts that allow us to serve the planet, which is, I think, where you're going right now with your book and why you're here today, is because you realize that the value in all these experiences are now you're able to, hey, Mindy, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. It's so good that you could be here. Mindy has been she's a big fan of our show, one of the most loyal fans. I'm really glad you're here, Mindy. And she's also, I'll just give you a little history, Felix. She was one of my food captains at Ground Zero after 9/11. She was a regular who came, I think, twice a week to manage a team of volunteers, prepare and serve our meals. So we go back a long time and we're dear friends, and I'm so glad that she's joined us here today. So welcome, Mindy.
Welcome.
And back to your story now. You were talking about, you're writing a book, and what you've learned through this false idea. I call it the false narrative of the scarcity mindset, that you somehow have to do stuff because we're somehow not enough as we are.
Right. And I think, once I was there on 9/11, you bring up a very tragic time in all of our lives. And 7 years later, of course, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor as a result of the dust that I breathed in. So I think that was my first encounter with any sort of positive, I hate the term positive thinking because it's just so wrong, but reprogramming of my brain. And I remember during the time that I had radiation therapy, we would drive from Pennsylvania, living in a house that we couldn't afford, and we would drive to Robert Wood Johnson, to the cancer center, so I could have my radiation. My appointment was at 4:00, and we would leave at 2:30, and we would catch the last half hour of the Marianne Williamson broadcast on the Oprah channel at that time, on Sirius Radio. And I thought, ooh, this woman has it all together. And I would listen to it faithfully. I bought the book that I read from every day, which is A Year of Miracles, Marianne's book, which is a devotional prayer book every single day. And I've been doing it for like 5 years. And in fact, when I was answering that text, that was I guess you could say my friend who became a life coach. She lives in California now, and we read from it daily. And I started not stalking her. Police were not involved, but I started going to see her at the Omega Institute whenever she was in New York, at Marble Collegiate, and following that, and Randall did too, and following that philosophy that says that when we're born innocent, and the only thing we can do and have the capacity to do is love. And then, as you just said, we're poisoned throughout our lives, and we're brainwashed into thinking we're not enough. And it takes a lifetime until you return to love, which was her seminal book in 1992, which I read I don't know how many times. So that was my first foray into that type of thinking. And that now, 2007 to when Rand died in 2017, was a 10-year period that I was struggling, and I was struggling, and I was struggling. And Rand would say to me all the time, he would say, Felix, you talk about this whole idea of love, but I don't see where it's being enacted. I don't see any actions that you're taking. Of course, that was, as I look back now, that was all his craziness, not mine. Right?
Yeah, it's called projection.
Of course, that's exactly what he was doing. So, and then of course, one day Rand went to bed in 2017, and we were sleeping in separate beds at the time, and that's another whole show. We had a routine, you know.
I understand.
Of course. And 2 dogs, and I walked in hoping he would wake up the same way he did for the past 24 years that we were together, and he didn't. So that left me all alone. And we used to talk about death all the time, Rand and I, and we would say, you see how fleeting it is? Our friend Anthony Bassiano died maybe 6 or 7 years prior to his death. And he said, someone called me and said, Randall, you're not going to believe this. What? Anthony Bassiano died. Oh my God, you're kidding. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And this was a close friend of ours. And he said, I'll make sure, and I'm out at the funeral, I'll tell Felix, take care. Felix, Anthony died. You're kidding. No, I'm not. That's terrible. Do you want Chinese food tonight? And that's how it was after I announced that Rand had died. Not one person came to me. Not one person offered their help. I was truly alone. Not one person. My brother came, and that was it. Not one family member, nothing. No one came to me to say, what do you need? Do you need help? And I did need help. But I realized I got to do this by myself. And I got to reach down while I was working. I got to reach down, and I got to find the strength to do this. And that, Randall's death, threw me into a foreclosure on our old house, his estate, his mother, marshaling all the assets, getting a tax ID number, creating a bond for Nancy's share, all of those things, which I thank my parents for making me go to law school, because I was able to navigate all of that, you know. And because of the money that Rand left me, I was able to come here to a new house and buy this house and renovate this house. Maybe things would have been different if Rand hadn't left me that money, but I still would have had to do all of those things for his estate, and I still would have had to do those things. Maybe I wouldn't be living in this house. I'd be living in an apartment, but I still would have learned my lessons, because all those things taught me a tremendous amount. And furthermore, I would add that I never paid a bill when I was with Rand for 23 years. Here I was teaching financial literacy to clients when I didn't have my own financial literacy. I mean, you've heard the story about the shoemaker's shoes. The shoemaker's children have the worst shoes. We didn't have any financial literacy. And here I was telling people what to do with their money.
Let's see what this financial user says. It sounds terrible. Would that be the word? It does sound terrible, but would that be the word that you would use to describe these times, that it was terrible? What would be a word and I'm not disputing this person because it may sound terrible to them, and it may sound like fear. But what would be the word that you might describe that was terrible? The word, or would you say is there another word that would describe that better fits what you were going through when your husband died?
Well, it certainly was terrible in the beginning.
Yeah,
it was horrible in the beginning, and then it became transformative. I mean, I'm a member of a support group on Facebook, an LGBT support group, and there are people on that group who want to kill themselves. Their partners leave, and they want to go with them. And I don't underestimate, nor do I say poo-poo the fact that they're suffering, but 3, 4, 5 years later, look, I loved Randall with all my heart, and he was truly the great love of my life, and also my Svengali, for better or for worse. But I would never jump into a grave because he died. And we knew that he was going to die first. So I was going to circle back to what I was going to say. His picture is right there. Every morning I say, thank you for everything you gave me, and I hope you're proud of me. And when I say that, what I'm referring to is my finances now bear no resemblance to what they looked like when we first met, because I refuse to fall into that same financial quagmire that we were in, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
That was a transformative experience for me. Paying my bills, doing everything that I needed to do to keep my job. All of those things, buying a new home, renovating the new home, not spending too much, doing those things that basically he taught me. I'm not suggesting, though, that he followed his own advice. He had the structure. Rand was an accountant. He had the structure. He knew how to keep beautiful spreadsheets, Martin. Beautiful. But that didn't prevent him from filing bankruptcy.
I understand.
Beautiful spreadsheets.
I understand.
But now I have a budget. So I just won't spend more than my budget every single month. I save in my SEP. I do the things that I'm supposed to be doing. At 55, I learned the lessons later in life, but I did learn them. I just wish he was here to watch me do it, but I know he's watching me from above.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So you've turned his life into a legacy, and you're living it.
Yes, I did. And also, I should hasten to mention that my friend Michelle Becci, who was one of my clients at Strategies, she worked for Oracle for a very long time, and she made a fortune of money. And when we opened we had a restaurant on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which closed, and she had loaned us $5,000. Well, investors, everybody kicked in money. When Rand died, I wanted to give her back the $5,000. I went to her and I said, Michelle, I want to give you back your $5,000. Absolutely not. I am not taking that money from you. I said, Michelle, I have the money now. I'd like to give it back to you. I'd like to write you a check. No. You have a pool in your backyard? Buy yourself a float in the pool in your backyard. I said, a $5,000 float? I said, what are you talking about? I said, let me think about it. So sure enough, I thought, what should I do? And Rand fancied himself a performer, Martin. In high school, he was in all the plays. And then after he graduated, I didn't believe, and after he graduated, he's from Michigan. And after he graduated from high school, his friend was the director of a small theater in Royal Oak, Michigan. And so Rand was in West Side Story in that particular show that they staged that season with a full orchestra. And Rand would talk about that experience in his life. And I would kid him all the time. And I would say, Rand, how long did you spend on the boards? And he's, that's the term when they talk about the theater. How long did you spend on the boards? Oh, I spent a good 3 weeks on the boards. And so now what I did with the money is every year I take her money, $1,000, and I give a scholarship at the local high school to a theater performer who wants to pursue a career in the arts.
Wonderful.
When I told her that, this is the kind of person she is, I said, Michelle, I've decided what to do with your money. I'm going to endow a scholarship, $1,000, and I'll do it continuously. I'll just give $1,000 every single year, even after her money runs out. But she said, oh my God, Felix, I'm going to start to cry. That is such an amazing story. And you know what? It's not going to be $5,000. I said, why? She said, because it's going to be $10,000. She gave me another $5,000 for that scholarship. And it was such an expression of goodness and empathy, and you name the adjective. It was just beautiful. So that's how I'm honoring my Randall. as I refer to him now.
I love that story.
It's a great story.
It's a real story of true generosity.
Yes.
And I always, as a prosperity coach and mindset coach, I'm always saying, if you want to live prosperously, be generous.
Yeah.
Live generously, and you'll be surprised. That means to give without any expectation of any quid pro quo.
Exactly.
When it's like the difference between being nice and being kind. Sometimes we're nice to people because we kind of want something back. But when we're kind, we don't have to wait. If I'm kind, when you give that $1,000, when she gave you the extra $5,000, she experienced the joy of being kind.
Yes.
So when we're kind, when we practice generosity, we get the benefit immediately in the doing of the act. And that's what I got from the story. And I got a little bit emotional when you shared it, because I could feel exactly what that is, because you transferred that experience into me. And that's what happens when we share our stories.
Right. You're sending out goodness.
Yeah, it's
right?
to see, it's what inspires, to see the goodness in others.
Exactly. I mean,
let me ask you a question so you can help you. There might be people who listen to the replay who are going through a tragedy right now. Particularly coming through the pandemic. They may have lost someone. They may have lost a family member through the pandemic, and they're in pain. They're in suffering, and they're not where you are yet. They're still in that place of they can't really see beyond the terrible, tragic, and the loss of their loved one. What would you suggest they do as a first step to begin to see? What would you suggest they do? Or as a way, would that be to take maybe to start a meditation practice? Would that be to join a group? All the above. What would be your advice to someone who's going through a tragic event and they're still sort of stuck in that space?
Well, I can only speak from my experience, Martin.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is that there was so much to do after Rand died that I didn't have time to grieve Randall. I mean, the moment he died, we were in foreclosure in the old house. I had to somehow stave that off. I had to figure out what was I going to do. When I did figure it out, other things came by. I went to his funeral that we had in Michigan, and it was so, it was another thing that we had to do. We had to go there. We had to cremate him. We had to share the ashes. I was spread so thin like a piece of pastry, and everybody wanted a piece of me. All of those activities took part in my head. And so I really wasn't able to grieve Randall. Later on, when I didn't have anything to do, I looked around and I said, everything's done. Now what do I do? And I came back to thinking, this is the time where I would cook dinner for Randall. This is the time, so in my experience, I had things to do. However, tell you, every morning when I get up, I give gratitude to heaven, to God. I give gratitude to God. I say, thank you for letting me live another day, because when I was in my support group, and still am in my support group for my brain tumor, someone said, Felix, this is a limited, to bring up a theater reference again, this is a limited engagement on this planet. So you have to, despite the fact that you've gone through a tragedy, you have to make it count. And I took voice lessons. I took all of these, I took Spanish lessons. I tried to fill my day up, not to forget Rand. I had to put the grieving of Rand its inappropriate place, because if I used that grief to hold me back from doing something, if he was standing right here today, he would say, what the hell is wrong with you? Get out there, live your life. There's an appropriate amount of grieving for every single person, not universal, but for every person, there's an appropriate amount of grieving. My cousin Elaine went through a divorce 10 years ago. I run into her ex-husband at the gym all the time. He's moved on. He has a new wife, etc. She has locked herself up in her house with her 3 kids for 5 years, and she's truly living Grey Gardens. Remember the movie Grey Gardens? She's living in a house that's falling apart around her because she has not worked through that grief. You got to work through the grief, and then you got to find things to do. But specifics, I have no idea. I can only tell you what I did.
So yeah, in retrospect, you said you immediately got sort of launched into doing, but you did do one thing. You started every day with a prayer.
That's it.
So that's what I would suggest, and that gave you the power as someone who teaches prayer and meditation as a way to empower ourselves, that gave you the empowerment to do the doing in a good way.
Yes.
I'm going to make that up and just sort of add that to your story.
You're right. I mean, the energy comes from somewhere, and you have to tap into that energy.
Right. And all those years of returning to love with Marianne Williamson was where you learned that process, by the way. And I'm a big, I'll share a story with you, is that how I got my mission in life, which is to eradicate the scarcity the mindset from the planet, which is why I'm a prosperity coach, is because we've really, a few years ago, right after Trump was made president, I went to hear Marianne at the Collegiate Church. And there was a packed house because everybody was wanted to hear how was Marianne going to talk about this event that now she was living across the street from. She was looking at her window and seeing Trump Towers every day. How are we going to hear about her perspective from A Course in Miracles about what happened? So I was in the audience, and among just a packed house, it was quite an event. It was great, and she was a great, as always, a wonderful inspirer. And she comes out to the audience and she asks questions and answers, and somehow we got into a conversation. And I responded to her, and I had the mic, and we were talking. And we came down to the conclusion that the root source, the root cause of all the problems in the world, including the one we currently lived in, was rooted in this scarcity mindset, this lie that there's not enough resources, there's not enough money, and that we're somehow not enough, and we're all struggling to get power. We're all struggling to prove our worth. We're everybody, including, and that's the root cause of the problems in the world. So I said to Marianne, I said, well, Marianne, now that I'm out there all kind of gloating because I am speaking to one of the world's biggest spiritual teachers on the planet, and we're agreeing, and she's kind of stroking my ego. I guess I'm stroking hers a little bit, and I'm enjoying it, enjoying all the attention, And so I said, well, what do we do now that we both recognize what the problem is? How do we solve it? And she thought for a second, and then she came back to me and she says, Martin, which y'all know she knew my name. She said, what we do is we have to change the narrative of how we talk about money to the truth. And be careful what you commit to when you're speaking to one of the world's biggest spiritual teachers in front of a packed house. And I said into that microphone, I am going to do that. And that is when I committed to that life mission. And I've been living into that mission ever since. So warning, be careful about what you commit to when you're speaking to Marianne Williamson or any other major teacher in front of 300 plus people, because you're going to have to live up to that.
Of course.
And I'm glad I did, because it really changed my life, and I've been on that trajectory and that's part of the reason why I'm here. I'm changing that narrative, and I'm working on a TEDx right now that I'm submitting to do a TED talk on, I think it's something like our future depends on how we think about money. And it's all based on that one comment that I made that afternoon in that church to Marianne Williamson. And when I committed to making that my life's purpose, was really to eradicate that scarcity mindset, so we can live into we can stop poverty thinking and start prosperity living, which is exactly what you're doing. You're an example of that, Felix. Your poverty thinking was like, I got to do all these things, have these fancy cars, houses, be important. That's poverty thinking, because you think we can show the world how prosperous is wrong. When you let go of that scarcity thinking, well, then we can go into the truth that I am abundance. I am love. And I can create anything I need to create, including money, out of that source. And that is the truth. And that's the truth that I'm in. So thank you so much for reminding me in this conversation today about that conversation that I had with Marianne Williamson, because that's really what put me on the trajectory of doing what we're doing right now, because I'm really wanting to change that narrative to the truth. We are abundant. We come from prosperity. We are born out of abundance. We're born out of that abundant love and infinite love. And there are infinite resources, including money. We can pull from. Money is created from within ourselves. It's not something we can hoard. And it's an infinite supply of that wealth. So thank you for that reminder.
Well, I love that story that you just told, because it reminds me of how many pebbles Marianne Williamson has truly thrown into the ocean and the ripples that are felt all around the world.
Exactly. I love that she ran for president.
Yeah,
I don't know that she would be a good, but I don't know about her being a president.
I agree.
But I think her voice on the stage and her bringing this awareness to the truth from a spiritual perspective, that there's another whole dimension that it's never been on the political stage before, it gave the groundbreaking rules for us to actually have leaders who live from that truth today. And so who practice those principles, empathy, compassion, and love, and caring for the people that they govern. So I think she didn't become the president, but she did play a pivotal role in creating the transformational world we live in today for this to take place.
No, I agree.
And that's what she's doing. And that's
for sure. And the whole idea about money, which you just raised, I think has always been, to me, the only reason I live the way I do is because of the money that I received after Rand's death. And I oftentimes wonder, and this touches upon the point you just made, if I didn't have this money, would I be the same way? And I think I would be.
Yep.
I would be the same, Felix.
It isn't the money that gives you the freedom.
Right.
The money is the bridge or the Band-Aid it even like bankruptcy. Even these external solutions are not the cure of the problem. The problem was you had that transformational experience inside you that lets you know you have everything you need to create a wonderful life.
That's it.
But it was the money, and it was those things that gave you some relief to go inside yourself to get to a new place. So those externals, it's not that those external solutions are bad. They're actually quite good. It's kind of like pain relievers. They're not going to cure the pain, but they might cure whatever's causing the pain. But they will relieve the symptoms temporarily, so you can go deeper inside yourself and get a cure. So thank you. That's what I want. And I see right now that I knew this happened. We had such a good time in our talk that we would forget about the fact that it's time to meditate. Speaking of that, and you're going to be surprised, but I do a form of meditation called centering prayer, which actually comes out of A Course in Miracles prayer. You might make them familiar to you. Yeah. So let's just sit back, relax, and listen, and let me guide you and our audience through 20 minutes of meditation. And I'm going to start out by giving you some guidance here. You can leave your eyes open, you can leave your eyes closed, it doesn't really matter, but just allow yourself to get still, sit up tall, and be a proud human being, and begin to go inside yourself by focusing on our breath. And one thing I will say to you is that when we meditate, it's not like you're going to quit thinking. You can't quit thinking. That's what the mind does. The mind thinks. And you don't want it to quit thinking, because that means you're not alive. So as long as you're living, you are going to be thinking. But we can slow it down long enough so that the heart can move in and take the reins of our lives, so that the brain is not the one that's running the show, but our heart space. And that's the whole point, is to slow the mind down long enough so that we can experience heart space and experience the love and empower ourselves to go through the next moment. And that's what we're going to do right now. And one of the things that happens when we think is that our tongues vibrate slightly. So one of the things we can do is to slow down the mind, we can reverse engineer it and slow down the tongue. And the way to do that is simple. Take the tip of your tongue and slightly rest it on the roof of your mouth behind your two front teeth, and just relax your tongue there, part your lips, and relax your jaw. And then just begin to breathe naturally through your mouth and through your nose, and gently begin to focus on massaging and slowing down your tongue, and see what happens.
Okay.
Just try it and just see what happens. Just put all the mind's thought on massaging the tongue with the breath. Just massage the tongue, gently massaging your tongue. Begin to bring the breath in through the nose, through the mouth, into the throat. Gently massaging the tongue, expanding the space around your hearts. And with your belly muscles, pull that breath more deeply into your belly to ground your spirit into your body and into your chair. And just focus your mind for the moment on this breathing that you do all day long as an intention to bring you more closer and more focused on your interior landscape. Bringing the breath in through the nose and through the mouth, gently massaging the back of your tongue, expanding the heart space, and anchoring the breath into your belly. And just do that for a moment as we begin to focus on that and let go of our thoughts, our feelings, and beliefs and opinions about everything. Hold on to nothing. And to create a little bit more space, we're going to do 3 belly breaths. And they look like the following. With your belly muscles, you're going to pull the breath in through the nostrils and through the mouth. Massage the tongue. Expand the heart. And with those belly muscles, pull the breath deep, deep, deep into your belly and ground yourself in the chair. And then we're going to hold it for a second and let it go. You ready? Let's take the first one. In through the nose and the mouth. Massage the tongue. Open the heart. Really expand the belly. Anchor it. Hold it just for a second. Now just let it go. And as you release the breath, release every thought, every opinion, every judgment, every story you have about me, about Felix, about this world. Hold on to nothing. Let it all go. Just let it go. Surrender it into divine consciousness. Let it return home to love. We're going to do another belly breath to create a little bit more space. And again, with your belly muscles, pull the breath in through the mouth and the tongue. Massage the back of the tongue. Open your heart and pull the breath more deeply into your belly and make some space. Ready? Pull it in. Hold it. And now just gently let it go. Relax the mind, relax the breath, relax the belly, relax the heart. Soften everything. And let everything go. All sense of control, all sense of knowing. Hold on to nothing. And just be still and fall back into love. And we're going to do one more, and then I'm going to be quiet for the duration of the meditation. However, you're going to hear some wake-up bells, sweet little wake-up bells that wake us up from our thinking, our stories, our planning, and use the vibration of the bell to bring us more deeply inside ourselves. So here's the last belly breath. Bring it in. Bring it deeper into your belly. Hold it till it's a little bit uncomfortable, like it is to hold on to stuff that you don't need. Now let everything go. Hold on to nothing and just be still and know that I am God. Not me, Martin, not you, Felix, but that deep, deep, deep I amness, that love within us. And there's the sweet sound of that wake up bell to wake us up from our thinking, maybe our sleeping, to just let it go and fall back into love. Just let it go and go back into the prayer by falling back into love. Oh, there's the sweet sound of that wake up bell, waking us up out of our thinking, our planning, our worrying, maybe even our sleeping. Let's just be grateful for it and let it remind us to let everything go and fall back into love for the last few minutes of this meditation. And there's our final bell to bring us back to the material world. This wonderful earth we live on, this wonderful planet. Maybe a little more empowered, coming from the heart, from the path of love, the path of the heart. To start the path of the heart, we have to start with heart space, just like Felix did after the death of his husband, starting every morning from a place of gratitude to do all the things that had to be done. And I'd be willing to bet that it was that stepping into heart space with gratitude that empowered Felix, like it empowers all of us to do the things we do, to take us to the next step, the next step, and to the next step. If we start in the heart space. So thank you for joining us. And if anybody got any questions in the audience, please type them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them for you. If you're listening to the replay, thank you for joining us for the replay. I hope this was beneficial to you. I hope you got some exciting and some information that will be helpful to you as particularly if you're going through a difficult time in your life of loss and tragic events that can be so painful. And many people, we've all come through probably one of the most painful, tragic crises in the history of the world, given the pandemic, the attack on our democracy here in this country, and racism. I mean, there's just no end to what we've been through in the last 12 months. And all of us have been impacted by it. And some of us may still be stuck in it. So I hope that today what you learned is an opportunity to get unstuck so that you can transform this fear and this tragedy into love and prosperity. Because that's the point. And let's see what Wendy had to say. Thanks, Felix. Well, thank you. You're welcome, Mindy. Thank you for being here with us today. Yeah. So, Felix, before we close out, let me ask you a question. Are you available? I know you don't have like a business online. You're an arbitrator. You work mostly as an arbitrator. But if people want to get to know you and contact you, is there a way that they could do that?
Feel free to email me.
Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Feel free to email me.
Or Facebook Live, or you're on Facebook?
Sure.
It can send you a Facebook direct message or something like that. Felix Papadakis.
Yep.
That would be the best way for people to get in touch with you. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to get, and I know Felix well, I'm sure he's very generous, as you heard. And if his story spoke to you today, and you'd like to find out maybe get some help or some support, send him a direct message on Facebook, and I'm sure he will be glad to reach out. Also, again, reply to any comments you have in this comment section of this broadcast in the replay. I want to let you know about a couple of things that are coming up. One, as you know, I'm a spiritual teacher and a prosperity and mindset coach, working largely with gay, bi, and transgender men. And we have a Facebook group called Heart Space for Gay, Bi, Transgender Men that you're welcome to join if that's you. And I wanted to let you know that on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching from my new workbook called The Heart Space Method for Problem Solving. And I use a different approach. I use a spiritual approach of surrender to solve problems. And I created a workbook to show you exactly, it's a 3-step process, exactly how to do that. And I'm going to be teaching that in that group this Wednesday at 1 o'clock live. So that's one event coming up. So that's you. Then if you're gay and bi and trans, then join us for that and bring your problem. We'll try to solve it during the workshop. If you're outside that part of our community, I have another group for you. It's called the Financial Mystic Sanctuary. And I want to let you know that in that group, I'm going to be hosting a major event in about 2 weeks, a live, an interactive live workshop on Zoom, where I'm going to be teaching the same workbook. So both communities are welcome. You can just join the Financial Mystic Sanctuary. Both are links that are close to here. Both are Facebook groups that I manage. And if you're not part of the gay community, gay male community, then I'm going to encourage you to join us in that community and attend my live workshop in 2 weeks on a Saturday afternoon for an hour, where I'm going to give you a copy of the workbook and teach you how to use it. And you know what? It works. It's what I've been doing for a long time with my clients and myself. It's exactly what we've been talking about here. It's a 3-step process. It says first I have to own the problem, then I got to get clear what the problem is, and then I surrender it to a higher power through surrendering prayer. It's a very simple process anybody can use, but that's how we solve our problems. As Einstein says, you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created the problem. We need to transcend the ego thinking mind and go into what I call the creative aware mind of the heart, which always knows the truth to help us solve our problems. Okay? So that's 2 things you can do. Join us in one of those 2 groups. We'd love to have you there. And I'm glad you joined us today. Thank you for being here. Felix, thank you so much for being with us today and bringing and sharing your story and being so vulnerable. I know these are difficult stories to share sometimes because they bring up old feelings of woundedness and hurt and sadness. And so it takes a lot of courage to come, particularly in a live broadcast, to be able to share those. So thank you, because people do appreciate it.
Just before you commented about what you just commented about, I pulled out this prayer that I read periodically, and it's from A Return to Love. And may I share it with you?
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
It's what I call the surrender prayer. And she wrote it. It's the last page of the book. And she wrote, "Dear God, I give this day to you, the fruit of my labor and the desires of my heart. In your hands I place all questions. On your shoulders I place all burdens. I pray for my brothers and for myself. May we return to love. May our minds be healed. May we all be blessed. May we find our way home from pain to peace, from fear to love, from hell to heaven. And so it is.
I love that. What a wonderful way to finish this off. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Felix, and thank you for bringing that wonderful surrendering prayer to us today. May love and prosperity. Hold on 1 second, please. I want to talk to you backstage before we go. But
okay.
In the meantime, may love and prosperity prevail. And I'll see you back here tomorrow when I have another wonderful, extraordinary GBTQ man who's going to do some ordinary things that inspire us. So come back tomorrow at the same time. Much love.